The alien Empress mourned her fallen child, until a human returned with miracles. Energy lights glowed across the skies like artificial stars. The empire was vast, powerful, and proud. Its ruler, the Empress Valith, was known across the galaxy as a being of sharp mind and unbreakable will. Now the skies were dim. Ships no longer rushed toward the capital. Trade lanes were empty. The great halls echoed with footsteps instead of music and debate. The empire was not at war. It was not defeated. It was mourning. At the center of it all sat the Empress. She remained on her throne, tall and still, her form wrapped in dark ceremonial robes that had not been worn for centuries. Her species did not age like humans, but grief marked her clearly. Her once bright eyes had dulled. Her presence, once overwhelming, now felt distant, like a star that had gone cold. Her child was gone. The heir to the Zelorian throne, born after centuries of waiting, had perished during a diplomatic journey beyond imperial borders. The official reports said it was an accident. A sudden energy collapse aboard a neutral station. Systems failed. Life signs vanished. Recovery teams arrived too late. The body was never found. To the Zelorians, this meant only one thing: death was final. Their science was advanced beyond most civilizations, but it had limits. Once a mind dispersed beyond a certain threshold, it could not be recalled. The Empire accepted this truth long ago, except the Empress did not. She replayed the moment endlessly, the last transmission. The faint distortion in her child's voice, the sudden silence that followed. Every advisor told her the same thing. There was nothing more to be done. She dismissed them all. The throne room was sealed now. Only a few trusted guards remained, silent and unmoving. Outside those walls, the High Council struggled to keep the Empire stable. Worlds depended on the Empress's decisions, but none came. Orders went unanswered. Messages piled up unread. Other species noticed. Some feared the Empire would strike out in grief. Others sensed weakness. Borders were tested. Old rivals whispered of opportunities, yet no fleets moved. The Empress had not ordered war. Instead, she ordered silence. The humans were rarely mentioned aloud, but their presence hung over everything. They had been part of the diplomatic mission. Observers, allies some said, outsiders others insisted. No proof connected them to the tragedy, but many in the Empire quietly blamed them anyway. Humans were strange, emotional, reckless. They saw the universe differently. Still, the Empress did not accuse them. She had seen the human envoy's face when the station collapsed. Shock, fear, desperation, not guilt. If there was blame, it lay with fate itself. Far from the capital world, beyond the borders of the Empire and outside any major trade route, a single human ship drifted through the dark. It was small, old, and clearly modified many times over. Its hull bore the marks of long travel and hard landings. Inside, one human moved slowly through narrow corridors, checking systems that barely held together. His name was Elias Ward. He had once worn the uniform of the Terran Exploration Corps. Now there were no markings left on his clothing. He had removed them long ago. The ship's interior was quiet but not peaceful. Screens flickered with data streams. Energy readings scrolled endlessly. At the center of the main cabin sat a reinforced containment unit, glowing faintly with a soft blue light. Elias stood before it, his hands shaking slightly. Inside the unit was a data core unlike any other. It was not purely human technology, nor purely alien. It was a desperate creation, built from fragments salvaged from the destroyed station and enhanced by months of work in secrecy. Most believed the Zelorian child was dead. Elias did not. During the disaster, while others fled, he had stayed. His training told him evacuation was the priority, but something else guided him. Humans had a habit of refusing to accept final answers. When sensors showed nothing but silence, he kept searching. And he found something, not a body, not a signal in the usual sense. It was a pattern, a faint, repeating anomaly in the quantum field where the child's presence had last been detected. Alien science dismissed it as background noise. Elias did not. To humans, patterns mattered. He recorded everything, even when his superiors ordered him to stop. When the incident was officially closed, Elias resigned. He took the data and disappeared into the edges of known space. For months, he worked alone. He studied Zelorian biology, human neural mapping, and experimental theories that most scientists considered useless. Sleep became rare. Food was an afterthought. Every failure felt like losing the child all over again. But humans were stubborn. The containment unit pulsed softly now, responding to something only Elias fully understood. It was not life, not yet, but it was not nothing either. Elias looked at the display, reading the same line again and again. Stable echo detected. He exhaled slowly. His hands pressed against the unit's surface, careful, almost reverent. "I told you," he whispered to the empty ship. "I told you it wasn't over." He knew what this meant. He also knew what it would cost him. Returning to the Zellorian Empire was dangerous. Even if the Empress had not declared humans enemies, others might act on their own. And if he was wrong, if this was false hope, then he would be remembered as the human who dared to disturb an Empress's grief. But humans feared regret more than danger. The ship turned slowly, adjusting its course. Engines warmed as it aligned toward Imperial space. On the capital world, the Empress finally moved. She stood from her throne for the first time in many cycles and walked toward the wide window overlooking the darkened city. Lights flickered below, dim and careful, as if the planet itself feared disturbing her sorrow. An aide approached quietly, lowering his head in respect. "Your Majesty," he said, voice low, "there is a signal at the outer boundary, a human vessel." The Empress did not turn. "Does it request entry?" she asked. "Yes." "Does it carry weapons?" "No, Your Majesty, it travels alone." Silence stretched between them. The aide hesitated before continuing. "The human requests an audience. He claims to carry information about the incident." The Empress's fingers tightened slightly against the edge of the window. "Information," she repeated. Many had come to her with theories, explanations, and comfort. She had dismissed them all. This was different. This was a human, one who had been there. Hope was dangerous. It had already been taken from her once. "Bring him," she said at last. The aide froze, clearly surprised. "Your Majesty?" "I said bring him," the Empress repeated, her voice steady but heavy with something deeper. "If this is cruelty, then I will face it myself." As the aide hurried away, the Empress closed her eyes. Somewhere deep within her, beneath layers of grief and restraint, something stirred. Not hope, not yet, but curiosity. And far beyond the palace walls, a small human ship passed through the Empire's defenses, its engines humming softly, carrying with it a fragile possibility that could change an empire forever. The human ship moved slowly through Zellorian space, guided by automated beacons and watched by countless unseen eyes. Defense platforms tracked every movement. Warships remained at a careful distance, weapons charged but silent. The Empire did not trust easily, and a lone human arriving at such a time was enough to make even experienced commanders uneasy. Inside the ship, Elias Ward sat strapped into the pilot's chair. He kept his hands visible and his movements calm. His heart beat hard in his chest, but his face showed only focus. Fear would not help him now. The containment unit behind him pulsed again, its blue light steady. Every time it did, Elias felt a mix of relief and terror. Relief that it still existed, terror that it might fail at the worst possible moment. As the ship passed through the final checkpoint, a communication channel opened. "Human vessel," a calm alien voice said. "You are cleared to land on the capital world. You will follow the assigned path. Any deviation will be met with force." "I understand," Elias replied. "I will comply." The channel closed. Below him, the capital world came into view. It was massive, wrapped in layers of atmosphere and faint lights. Even in morning, it was beautiful. Elias had seen many worlds, but few carried such weight. This was not just a planet. It was the heart of an empire. The ship descended and landed on a private platform reserved for high-level visitors. As soon as the engines powered down, guards surrounded the vessel. They were tall, armored, and silent, their weapons aimed but not raised. The hatch opened with a soft hiss. Elias stepped out slowly, hands open. He wore simple clothing, no symbols, no weapons. Only a small device hung at his side, sealed and inactive. An officer approached, eyes sharp and unreadable. "You will follow us," the officer said. "Any attempt to deceive or escape will end here." "I didn't come to escape," Elias answered quietly. They escorted him through long corridors of polished stone and glowing panels. The palace felt empty despite its size. Servants moved quietly. Officials spoke in whispers. It was like walking through a place holding its breath. As they moved deeper inside, Elias felt the pressure increase. Not physical, but emotional. The air itself seemed heavy with grief. He was brought before massive doors carved with symbols of Zellorian history. The guards stopped. "Wait," one of them said. The doors opened slowly. The throne room was vast and dim. Light filtered in from high above, casting long shadows across the floor. At the far end stood the throne, carved from a single piece of dark crystal. Upon it sat the Empress. Elias had seen images of her before. None of them prepared him for the reality. She was taller than most of her kind, her posture straight despite the weight she carried, her eyes fixed on him the moment he entered. They were not angry. They were exhausted. The guards withdrew, leaving Elias alone in the center of the room. "Human," the Empress said. Her voice echoed softly, controlled and calm. "You asked for an audience. Speak." Elias swallowed. This was the moment he had imagined 1,000 times. "My name is Elias Ward," he began. "I was part of the diplomatic mission aboard the station where your child was lost." The Empress's expression did not change, but the temperature of the room seemed to drop. "I know," she said. "Why are you here?" "Because the official report was incomplete," Elias replied, "and because I believe your child did not fully perish." Silence crashed down like a physical force. Several seconds passed. Elias did not move. When the Empress spoke again, her voice was dangerously quiet. "You will explain yourself very carefully," Elias nodded. "During the evacuation, after the main systems failed, I stayed behind longer than ordered. Our sensors detected something unusual near your child's last known position. It wasn't life as we measure it." "But it wasn't nothing. Your people declared it meaningless," the Empress said. "They did," Elias agreed. "So did yours." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Then why did you not?" Elias took a slow breath. "Because humans don't see the end the same way. When something disappears, we ask where it went. When something dies, we ask what remains." He activated the small device at his side. A holographic display formed between them, showing streams of complex data. "This is a quantum echo," Elias continued. "A repeating pattern left behind when your child's neural structure collapsed. Your science considers it residue, background noise." "And you do not," the Empress said. "No," Elias said softly. "We consider it a trace." The display shifted, showing models of neural reconstruction and energy stabilization. "I took the data with me," Elias said. "Not to hide it, to work on it. Alone, without politics or fear, I studied your biology. Your child's unique neural lattice interacts with reality differently than most species. It doesn't vanish all at once. It fades in layers." The Empress stood. Her movement was slow, controlled, but Elias felt the weight of it. She descended from the throne and approached the hologram. "You are telling me," she said, "that my child is neither alive nor dead." "I am telling you," Elias replied, "that your child left something behind that can respond." Her hands trembled just slightly. "For cycles," she said, "my scientists searched. They found nothing. I watched the universe close around that moment." "They stopped when the models said it was impossible," Elias said. "Humans have a bad habit of continuing after that point." He changed the display again. This time it showed the containment unit. "I built a stabilization field," he said. "It doesn't restore, it preserves, it holds the echo together long enough to interact." "You brought this into my empire," the Empress said. Her voice hardened. "Why?" "Because I couldn't finish alone," Elias answered honestly, "and because it was never mine to keep." The Empress stared at the projection, then at him. "Do you know what hope costs?" she asked. "Yes," Elias said, "but I also know what it's worth." She turned away from him, walking slowly back toward the throne. For a long moment, Elias thought she would order his execution. Instead, she spoke without looking at him. "You will be confined to a secure wing," she said. "My scientists will examine everything you have brought. If this is deception, if this is error, you will answer for it." "I understand," Elias said. "If," she continued, her voice tight, "there is even the smallest truth in what you claim, then you will have changed the meaning of loss for my people." She faced him again. "And if you are wrong," she said, "you will have reopened a wound that may never heal." Elias met her gaze. "I know," he said. "I would not have come if I wasn't willing to carry that weight." The Empress raised a hand. Guards re-entered the room. "Take him," she ordered. "And bring the device to the inner research sanctum. No data leaves this world." As Elias was escorted away, he felt the eyes of the Empress on his back. For the first time since the tragedy, the palace was no longer completely silent. Somewhere deep within its walls, machines began to hum. Scientists were called from isolation. Old theories were reopened. And in a chamber far below the throne room, the containment unit was activated under the Empire's most advanced instruments. The blue light pulsed once. Then again, a Zellorian scientist stared at the readings, disbelief spreading across his face. It responded, he whispered. Something responded. Above them all, the Empress stood alone in the darkened throne room, her hands clenched at her sides. She did not allow herself to hope. But for the first time since her child vanished, the universe no longer felt completely empty. The research sanctum lay far beneath the palace, protected by layers of security older than most stars the Empire ruled. Only a handful of scientists were allowed inside now, chosen not for status, but for patience. The Empress had made that clear. They worked in silence broken only by the soft hum of machines and the steady pulse of blue light coming from the containment unit. Elias stood behind a transparent barrier, hands folded, eyes fixed on the readings. He was no longer a guest, but he was not a prisoner either. He existed in a narrow space between trust and suspicion. The Zellorian scientists circled the unit carefully. Their movements were slow and precise. To them, this was not just advanced technology. It was a challenge to beliefs held for thousands of cycles. This pattern should not be stable, one of them said quietly. It should decay. It doesn't, another replied. It reinforces itself, Elias spoke without turning his head, because it remembers. Several scientists paused. Memories require a mind, one said. Not always a full one, Elias answered. Sometimes they need a place to land. The containment unit pulsed again, slightly brighter this time. The instruments reacted instantly, streams of data flowing across the displays. A technician leaned closer. There is structure forming, not random, organized. The room grew tense. News spread quickly through restricted channels. The echo was not fading. It was responding. Across the palace, whispers began again, not of mourning, but of uncertainty. High above, the Empress watched from a private observation chamber. She had ordered a direct feed installed into the room, though she pretended not to look at it. Her gaze kept drifting back, drawn against her will. She had told herself she would not hope. Hope had already broken her once. Still, when the blue light brightened, her breath caught. Elias was summoned to the central console. A senior Zellorian scientist addressed him, his tone controlled but strained. You said this was a preservation, the scientist said, not restoration. That's correct, Elias replied. Restoration comes later if it comes at all. And what are you doing now? The scientist asked. I'm giving the echo something familiar, Elias said. He connected a small device to the system. The readings shifted immediately. What is that? Someone asked sharply. A human neural anchor, Elias said. A template. Not to overwrite, just to guide. You are introducing foreign structure, the scientist said. This could destabilize everything. Elias nodded. It might, or it might help the echo remember how to be itself. The Empress's voice came through the chamber speakers. Proceed, she said, every head turned toward the sound. Your Majesty, a scientist began. I said proceed, the Empress repeated, her voice firm. I will accept the consequences. Elias activated the sequence. The blue light expanded, filling the containment field with gentle waves. The machines hummed louder, struggling to keep up. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a new signal appeared. It was faint, uneven, but it was there. That's not an echo, a technician whispered. That's feedback. The Empress stepped closer to the glass, her composure cracking just slightly. Elias leaned toward the console, adjusting parameters with careful hands. Easy, he murmured, as if speaking to a child. The signal grew stronger. The pattern shifted, forming recognizable structures that matched old medical records, neural pathways. Someone gasped. This is impossible, a scientist said. The mind cannot reconstruct itself from fragments. Elias did not look away from the display. It can if it's shown where it came from. Suddenly, alarms sounded. Energy levels spiked. The containment field strained. Stability dropping, someone shouted. The Empress's guards tensed, hands near their weapons, unsure who the danger truly was. Elias, the Empress said sharply, if this fails, it won't, Elias said, then more honestly, or if it does, it won't be because we stopped trying. He rerouted power, sacrificing redundancy for focus. The field flickered, then stabilized. The signal surged. A sound echoed through the chamber. Not a voice, not yet, but a tone. It was soft, almost lost in the machinery, but it carried a rhythm that made every Zellorian in the room freeze. They knew that rhythm. The Empress pressed a hand to the glass. That sound, she whispered. That is how my child used to speak before learning words. Elias swallowed hard. The tone repeated, stronger this time. The scientists stared at their screens, disbelief spreading across their faces. It's learning, one said. It's adapting. The echo was no longer just reacting. It was engaging. The Empress turned away suddenly, her shoulders trembling. For a moment she feared she would collapse. Grief and hope collided inside her, sharp and overwhelming. She forced herself to breathe. "Slow it down," she ordered, regaining control. "Do not push further." Elias nodded. "That's wise." They reduced the input, letting the system settle. The blue light dimmed to a steady glow. The signal remained stable and present. Silence filled the chamber again, but it was no longer empty. Hours passed. The scientists worked in shifts, documenting every change. The echo did not fade. It rested as if conserving energy. Elias sat on the floor near the barrier, exhausted. He had not slept in days. Still, he watched the unit like a guardian. A Zellorian scientist approached him quietly. "You risked everything," the scientist said. "Your career, your safety." Elias shrugged weakly. "Some things are worth more than both." "Why?" the scientist asked. "You did not know the child." Elias looked at the containment unit. "No," he said, "but I know what it's like to lose someone and be told to accept it. Humans don't accept that easily." The Empress returned to the chamber as the artificial cycle dimmed the lights. She stood beside Elias, separated only by the barrier. "You have done something no one else could," she said, "or dared to." Elias shook his head. "I didn't do it alone." She studied him for a long moment. "My people believe death is an ending," she said, "a clean line." "Humans see it as a question," Elias replied. "Sometimes the answer takes time." She turned her gaze back to the unit. "Is this life?" she asked. Elias hesitated. "It's a beginning." As if responding to the sound of her voice, the signal spiked gently. The tone returned, clearer now, followed by something else. A pattern, simple, repeating, recognition. A display translated the data into a visual representation. A shape formed, faint and incomplete, but unmistakably familiar. The Empress inhaled sharply. "That is," her voice failed her. Elias nodded. "It remembers you." The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was filled with awe. Across the empire, restricted messages began to circulate. Something was happening beneath the palace. Something that challenged everything they thought they knew. In the days that followed, the echo grew stronger. The containment unit was reinforced. New systems were built around it, blending human adaptability with Zellorian precision. The Empress ordered secrecy, not out of fear but protection. She would not allow politics or expectation to touch this fragile thing. Elias worked beside Zellorian scientists as an equal now. Suspicion faded, replaced by careful respect. One cycle, as the lights dimmed again, the echo changed. The tone shifted. Then slowly, deliberately, it formed something new. A word, broken, incomplete, but clear. "Mother!" The Empress fell to her knees. She did not cry out. She did not speak. She simply pressed her forehead to the glass, her hands shaking as tears finally came. Elias stepped back, giving her space. In that moment, the Empire's grief cracked open, not to spill pain, but to let something else in. Hope, fragile and terrifying, took its first breath. And for the first time in countless cycles, the universe had not taken something away. It had given something back. The word echoed through the chamber long after the sound itself faded. "Mother." The containment unit glowed softly, steady and calm, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But everything had changed. The Empress remained where she was, kneeling before the transparent barrier. Her hands rested against the glass, her shoulders rising and falling as she struggled to breathe evenly. For the first time since the loss, she did not try to hide her emotions. The scientist stood frozen, unsure whether to speak or leave. No one dared interrupt the moment. Elias stepped back further, giving her space. His chest felt tight and his eyes burned. He had hoped for this. He had worked for it. Still, hearing that single word felt unreal. After a long time, the Empress slowly stood. She straightened her posture, not as a ruler now, but as a mother holding herself together for her child. "Stabilize the system," she said quietly. "No further stimulation for this cycle." The scientists obeyed immediately, hands moving with renewed purpose. The machines adjusted, the glow dimmed slightly, and the signal settled into a calm, steady rhythm. The echo did not vanish. It stayed. News could not be contained forever. Within days, carefully chosen members of the High Council were brought into the research sanctum. They saw the data, they heard the recordings, some reacted with disbelief, others with fear, a few with quiet wonder. "This changes everything," one counselor said. "Yes," the Empress replied, "it does." She addressed the council not from her throne, but standing beside the containment chamber. It was a deliberate choice. "My child is not fully returned," she said, "but neither were they fully lost. This is not a miracle of power, it is a miracle of refusal." Her gaze shifted briefly to Elias. "The human did not accept our ending," she continued. "He asked a question where we declared silence." There were objections, warnings, concerns about balance, about precedent, about what this would mean for Zelorian belief and law. The Empress listened, then she raised a hand. "For generations we taught our people that death is final," she said. "That acceptance is strength, but perhaps we misunderstood strength." The council fell silent. "Strength," she continued, "is not only knowing when to let go. It is knowing when not to." The decision was made. The project would continue. A new wing was constructed beneath the palace, designed not as a lab, but as a place of healing. Human and Zelorian technology were woven together, not competing, but cooperating. The containment unit became a chamber. The chamber became a space. Slowly, carefully, the echo grew. It learned to form thoughts more clearly, simple emotions registered in the data: comfort, recognition, curiosity. Elias worked constantly, but no longer alone. Zelorian scientists now asked him questions instead of challenging him. They adapted human theories to their own understanding, and in doing so, expanded both. One cycle, the Empress was allowed inside the chamber itself. The field adjusted automatically, lowering its intensity to something gentle and safe. She stepped forward, her movements slow, respectful. "My child," she said softly. The glow responded immediately, brightening just a little. No words came this time, none were needed. She visited every cycle after that. The Empire began to feel the change. Trade resumed, borders stabilized. The tension that had gripped entire systems slowly eased. Whispers spread across the galaxy, though details remained unclear. Something had happened, something impossible. Other species sent inquiries, requests, some demanded explanations. The Empress refused them all. "This is not a tool," she said. "It is a life." Elias expected at some point to be sent away. Instead, one cycle he was summoned to the throne room. This time it was different. The lights were brighter, the space felt alive again. "You have given my people more than you know," the Empress said. "You have given us a second language for grief." Elias shook his head. "I just did what humans do." "And what is that?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "We try again." She studied him closely. "You will remain here," she said, "as long as you wish, as long as your knowledge is needed." Elias hesitated. "I didn't do this for reward." "I know," the Empress said. "That is why I trust you." Time passed. The echo crossed a threshold one day without warning. The readings changed, not in strength, but in complexity. The mind was no longer forming itself alone. It was reaching outward. A new body was grown using Zelorian methods, guided by human adaptive modeling. It was slow work. Careful work, no shortcuts were taken. When the day came, the chamber was filled only with those who mattered. The Empress stood at the center. Elias remained near the controls, ready to stop the process at the slightest risk. The transfer began. Energy flowed smoothly. Patterns aligned. The echo shifted, settling into its new form like a breath finally released. The body moved. Eyes opened. They were different, altered by the process, but unmistakably alive. The Empress did not move at first. She simply stared, afraid that motion itself might break the moment. Then the child focused on her. "Mother," they said again. This time the word was clear. The Empress crossed the distance in a heartbeat and pulled her child into her arms. She held them tightly, as if afraid the universe might try to take them again. Across the chamber, even the most disciplined Zelorian scientists bowed their heads. Elias turned away, wiping his eyes. The galaxy would learn the truth eventually. When it did, reactions were swift and intense. Some species feared humans more than ever, others sought them out. Alliances shifted, old assumptions cracked. Humanity gained a new reputation. They were not the strongest, not the most advanced, not the most numerous. They were the ones who came back when everyone else had stopped looking. The Empress addressed the galaxy months later. "Today," she said, "we acknowledge a truth. The universe is vast, cold, and often cruel, but it is not finished speaking." She placed a hand on her child's shoulder. "And neither are we." Elias stood among the gathered observers, anonymous once more. He did not need recognition. He had seen what mattered. As the ceremony ended and the stars burned quietly beyond the palace windows, the Empress approached him one last time. "You changed fate," she said. Elias shook his head gently. "No," he replied. We just didn't accept the first answer. And somewhere between human stubbornness and alien hope, the universe learned something new. Some endings are only pauses, and sometimes when everything says it's over, a human will quietly ask, "What if it is?"